They called it an investment. Not in me. In my sister. The college fund they promised since I was a child? Gone. Spent on Gabriella, the gifted one. The golden child. The better bet. I was 17 when my father said the words, "Veronica, you'll understand, she's a better investment. Better than me. Better than my future." So I worked nights. I bled for scholarships. I carried debt like a second spine. And 10 years later, when the bills came due, not mine, theirs, they called me again. This time for rescue. I gave them Gabriella's number. She was living in their basement. My name is Veronica. And this is how I learned blood doesn't always mean family. They thought I'd fold. Instead, I cut the cord. When I was a kid, I believed every word. Every holiday card that said, "For your future." Every smile from Dad as he dropped spare bills into a jar. "Veronica, one day you'll thank us." So I didn't ask for vacations. I didn't beg for new phones. I told myself it was worth it. College would be waiting, fully funded. At 17, I spread brochures across the kitchen table. Northwestern, Wisconsin, even Stanford. I thought we'd plan together. Instead, my father froze. The pause lasted only a breath, long enough to split me open. "We'll talk later," he said. Later was the living room. Curtains drawn, voices low. Mom cleared her throat. "Veronica, the fund is gone." I blinked, waiting for the punchline. Gone? Stolen? A scam? No. They spent it. On Gabriella. Robotics camps. Tutors. Private programs that couldn't wait. Dad's voice was firm, almost proud. It was a better investment. "You'll manage with loans." The words didn't just sting. They cut like glass, like being declared worthless in my own home. My friends were touring campuses with their parents. Posing for photos beside ivy-covered gates, I was staring at scholarship forms, feeling like a stock already written off. When I confronted Gabriella, she didn't even flinch. "Not my fault you're not as good at school," she shrugged. A 16-year-old girl, certain she deserved everything. That sentence stayed lodged in me longer than any debt. Not my fault, not my future. I worked double shifts at the diner. I studied until dawn. Sometimes I walked home past midnight, watching porch lights glow in houses where daughters were celebrated. I carried a backpack heavy with both books and betrayal. And I realized my family hadn't built a fund for me. They'd built a cage. They thought I'd beg. I learned to survive without them. College didn't feel like freedom at first. It felt like survival training. I stacked jobs the way other students stacked electives. Library assistant by day, waitress by night, construction laborer every summer. My hands blistered. My feet ached. But my grades stayed sharp. Because failure wasn't an option. Loans filled the gaps my parents had carved. I signed papers with trembling hands, knowing debt would shadow me for years. Still, I kept moving. One shift, one paycheck, one exam at a time. Meanwhile, Gabriella lived the dream I was supposed to have. Private dorms, tutors on demand, a major that changed every semester. Mom's calls were full of her updates. "Your sister joined robotics again. Your sister might study abroad. Your sister just needs more support." Support. That word tasted like rust. Because what I got were overdraft fees. And lectures about being independent. I stopped visiting home. Stopped expecting applause. On birthdays, I treated myself to cheap cupcakes. And whispered, "Happy birthday, Veronica." Loneliness was constant. Sitting in libraries at 2 a.m., surrounded by strangers. I'd imagine what it might feel like. To have someone proud of me. But the silence always answered first. By junior year, I built a rhythm. I interned at a finance firm downtown. The lobby gleamed with marble floors, and executives in tailored suits. I felt small walking in. But inside I carried years of grit. They noticed my work ethic. They noticed what my family never had. One manager told me, "You see opportunities most people miss." That sentence lit a spark. For the first time, recognition didn't feel like charity. It felt earned. Graduation came without fanfare. Other students posed with families holding banners and flowers. I stood alone outside the auditorium, clutching a cheap bouquet I'd bought myself. No one called my name. No one clapped. But I still smiled, because I knew silence couldn't erase what I'd built. Gabriella's updates trickled through gossip. She'd switched majors again. She needed another loan. She was still figuring it out. I wanted to feel pity. Instead, I felt clarity. We had both been given chances. The difference was, I turned mine into something real. After graduation, I moved to the city. Tiny apartment, peeling paint, but it was mine. I worked 80-hour weeks at the firm, learning every corner of real estate finance. I saved. I planned. I refused to crumble. Every lonely night, every quiet meal at a desk, was proof that I could stand alone. They thought debt would break me. It became the fire that built me. It was a Thursday evening when my phone rang. Dad's name lit up the screen. I almost ignored it. We hadn't spoken beyond shallow pleasantries in years. But something in me, morbid curiosity maybe, made me swipe accept. "Hi, Veronica," he said, voice tight. "It's been a while. How are you?" Small talk from him was unnatural. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a call. It was a setup. After a few strained exchanges, he broke. "Your mom's medical bills are piling up. We're behind on the mortgage. We were hoping you could help." The silence between us was sharp. I pressed the phone tighter. "Help? How?" "A little support. Just until things settle." His voice cracked, but mine hardened. "Have you asked Gabriella?" A heavy sigh. "She's not in a position to help right now." "What does that mean?" He hesitated, then confessed. "She's been living here in the basement. Things didn't exactly work out after college." I froze. The girl with every tutor, every dollar, every opportunity. Back where we'd started, under their roof. While I'd clawed my way into independence, she'd sunk into dependence. "So let me get this straight," I said slowly. "You gave her my college fund. You carried her through school. And now you want me to clean up the mess?" "Veronica, this isn't about that," he snapped. "This is about family." Family. That word nearly made me laugh. Because when I was drowning in loans, they handed me an anchor. When I needed them, they gave me silence. Now that their golden child had crumbled, suddenly I was the lifeline. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed his voice, pleading as if history didn't matter. Every unpaid birthday, every forgotten milestone, every better investment speech, they all crashed back in. The next morning, I called Gabriella. She answered sharp, defensive. "What do you want, Veronica? Dad says you're living there, that you can't help." "What's going on?" She sighed. "Things didn't work out, okay? I'm figuring it out." "Figuring it out? It's been years." "They're drowning and you're in their basement." Her tone turned venomous. "Oh, so now you're the perfect daughter? Miss Self-Made, spare me." My grip tightened on the phone. "They sacrificed everything for you, everything I didn't get, and you still squandered it." "I don't need a lecture," she spat. "No," I whispered, "but you need to grow up. Because I'm not saving you. Not this time." The golden child had fallen, and for the first time I wasn't under her shadow. Days passed, but the calls didn't stop. Mom texted. Dad left voicemails. Even Gabriella tried. "Family forgives," Dad said once. "You don't want to ruin this relationship." Relationship? The word burned in my chest. When had they ever built one with me? Was it during the birthdays they forgot? The graduations they skipped? The nights I cried alone over loan statements? No. They built a shrine to Gabriella, and I was expected to kneel at it. So when the phone rang again, I answered, not with patience, but with precision. "Veronica," Mom's voice wavered. "Please, we're desperate." "I bet you are," I said quietly. "You always assumed I'd manage." "Well, I did. And now you think I'll manage your mistakes too. That's not fair." "Fair?" My laugh was sharp. Fair was watching Gabriella unwrap tutors, cars, programs. While I unwrapped excuses, fair was working double shifts. While you told me debt would build character. Mom sobbed softly. "Sweetheart, we love you both." "Love is a verb," I cut in. "It shows up. It celebrates. It doesn't vanish until the golden child needs a bailout." The silence stretched. And then, faintly, Gabriella's voice broke in. "Veronica, please, I just need time. I'll figure this out if you cover things for now." My breath came slow, deliberate. "You forged your own cage, Gabriella." I broke mine. "And you want me to step back inside?" "No." Her voice cracked into a whine. "You don't get it." "No, I do. I get it perfectly. You had every chance, every dollar, every ounce of faith. And you wasted it. I had nothing but grit. And I turned it into a life. So don't tell me I don't get it." Dad finally snapped. "Veronica, we're your parents. We deserve your respect." The words hit like a gavel. As if respect were automatic. As if blood erased betrayal. I saw flashes. Empty chairs at my graduation. Pawn shop laptops wrapped as gifts. Their laughter echoing at Gabriella's parties. While I counted tips in silence. My voice dropped, cold. "You taught me respect is earned. And you never earned mine." The call ended with shouting, pleading, tears. But not from me. I set the phone down, feeling a silence unlike any before. No sting, no guilt, no tears. Just release. Like heavy chains clattering to the floor. For the first time in my life, I wasn't begging. I wasn't explaining. I wasn't trying to be enough. I was enough already. They thought I'd rescue them. Instead, I shut the door and kept my freedom. In the weeks after that call, my phone stayed quiet. For once, the silence didn't hurt. It healed. I poured myself into work, closing deals others thought impossible, building wealth from discipline, not handouts. But beyond money, I built something richer. A circle of friends who clapped loud at my wins, who showed up with cake on my birthdays, who made me feel seen. Chosen family, the kind that celebrates without condition. One night, I stood on my balcony, city lights glowing beneath me. I thought about that 17-year-old girl, staring at brochures with hope in her chest. She thought she'd been robbed of a future. But really, she'd been given a fire that forged her into steel. My parents still send short emails, updates about the weather, about Gabriella finding her footing. I skim them, but I don't rush to reply. Because closure isn't always a reunion. Sometimes closure is choosing peace over performance. Do I feel guilty? No, I feel free. Free from the endless begging for recognition. Free from debts I never owed. Free to decide who earns a seat at my table. And that's the point I carry now. Family is not just blood. Family is consistency. Family is respect. Family is presence. If you've ever been overlooked, if you've ever been told you weren't worth investing in, remember this. Your value isn't set by their choices. Your strength isn't capped by their neglect. You can build. You can rise. You can choose yourself. They thought I'd crumble without them, but I built a life they'll never own. Have you ever faced something like this? Wherever you're watching from, morning coffee or late night quiet, I'd like to hear your story in the comments. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like and share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Don't forget to subscribe for more true family betrayal stories. That reminds us we are stronger than we think.
I didn't check the porch right away. I waited until Lily was busy with her markers and the last crumbs of her cinnamon toast. Then I stepped outside, slow, careful not because I thought it might finally be there, but because I didn't want her to see me hoping. The porch was empty. Again. Inside, my daughter had already pulled up the family Facebook group on the old tablet. Claire had posted a picture of her kids, Josh, Ava, and Maddie, beaming beside 3 big boxes wrapped in plaid paper and tied with gold ribbon. From Grandma Evelyn. Handmade jam again, the caption read. Lily looked up at me. She's sick, smart, and quieter than she should be. Did Grandma forget me this year, she asked. I smiled too quickly. Maybe the post's just slow. She nodded. That was all. But her eyes lingered on the screen where Ava held up a card with glitter letters spelling her name. This wasn't the first time we didn't get a box, but it was the first time Lily noticed. And something about this year, this exact day, made it different for me too. Maybe it was how deliberately Evelyn had handwritten each child's name. Maybe it was how Claire's kids had matching Christmas pajamas, the kind Evelyn used to buy for me and Claire when we were their age. Or maybe it was just the look in Lily's eyes, that tiny pause before she nodded like she'd felt something shift, like she'd stopped asking if she was invisible and started wondering why. I walked back into the kitchen, opened the junk drawer, and stared down at the pile of old gift tags, most of them unused. They came in packs of 50. I had more than enough. I pulled one out and scribbled our names on it anyway, Marie and Lily. Then I slid it back under the others. I didn't tell Lily that I had checked the mail every morning for the past week, or that I kept Evelyn's number saved in my phone even though she hadn't used it in years, or that I still remembered how she used to wrap the cookie tins in red and white string when Claire and I were little. I didn't say any of that. I just sat down across from Lily and said, "Hey, want to help me make our own box this year?" She looked at me unsure. Who would we send it to? I hesitated. Then I said, maybe. No one. Maybe we keep it. Just for us. She nodded again, this time without looking away. I was 22 when I told her I was pregnant. I still remember the way she looked at me across the kitchen table, silent for so long. I thought maybe she hadn't heard me. Then she reached for her coffee, took a sip, and said, "Don't make this harder than it already is. You still have options." I told her I'd already made my choice. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just stood up, opened a drawer, and pulled out a yellow notepad. "I'll find an agency. You can't raise a child on waitressing tips and pride." I said I wasn't giving her up. She didn't speak to me again for 3 weeks. I moved out the next day, found a basement studio behind a retired mechanic's house, and worked double shifts until my ankles went numb. When Lily was born, I texted a photo. No reply. For the first few years, I held out hope. Sent pictures every birthday, called on Mother's Day. No response. Then, Claire's second child, Ava, turned one, and Evelyn threw her a garden party. There were pink balloons, finger sandwiches, a face painter. The whole family was invited except us. I still sent Lily's Christmas cards. She scribbled hearts and crooked snowflakes asking if Grandma liked glitter. We mailed them every December. Never got one back. Then one year, Claire called out of the blue. She sounded tired, flustered. Mom says she doesn't know where you live anymore. I said, it's the same house. Has been for 6 years. Claire went quiet, then said something I never forgot. You know how she is. She only remembers the ones that matter. I hung up. That sentence sat in my chest for months like a small sharp stone that wouldn't move. Not rage, not sadness, just weight. Still, I didn't say anything to Lily. When she asked if Grandma liked her drawings, I always said yes. But there were signs. Kids know. One Christmas, Claire's family sent us cookies in a tin Evelyn used to use. The handwriting on the tag was unmistakable. Evelyn's crossed out and relabeled. Claire had reused the box. Lily opened it and said, "Did Grandma send these?" I smiled. "No, sweetheart." Aunt Claire did. Then I folded the tin back up and put it in the cabinet behind the mismatched mugs. Years later, I'd open that same cabinet looking for a place to hide the birthday card Lily wrote and never sent. It had hearts on the front and the word Grandma spelled wrong. She hadn't asked me to mail it. She just left it on the counter and went to bed. That night, I stood in the hallway outside her room. She was asleep, one hand curled under her cheek, the way she used to do as a baby. I stood there longer than I should have, trying to understand how a person could look at a child like that and choose not to see her. I never found an answer. But that was the night I stopped correcting Lily when she said, "We don't have a grandma." I waited until the day after Christmas to call Claire. She answered on the third ring, sounded rushed, distracted. I heard Josh yelling in the background, something about hot cocoa and marshmallows. I kept my voice steady. "Did Mom ask for my address this year?" A pause. "Why?" Claire said. "We didn't get a box." Again. She exhaled like she'd been holding something in. "I don't know, Marie. Maybe she thought you moved. I haven't moved in 8 years. "I don't know what to tell you," she said. "You know how she is. Disorganized." I hung up before she could finish the sentence, but something about her tone stayed with me. It wasn't guilt. It was avoidance, the kind that says, I don't want to lie to you, but I also don't want to be the one who tells the truth. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and pulled out Lily's markers and glitter glue. We made our own Christmas box. I told her it was just for us, but part of me wanted to send it anyway, to prove we were still here. As I folded the tissue paper, I noticed something strange. The label sheet I'd picked up from the drawer still had the USPS tracking stickers Claire had sent us last year. I typed the number into my phone. Just curiosity. It showed the package had arrived on time, delivered 3 days before Christmas, addressed to Joshua Lane, same zip code as ours, just 3 houses down. Claire had mailed all her gifts using Mom's handwritten labels. I could tell by the looping E's. Mom hadn't lost my address. She'd written out every name, every street, every zip code. She just skipped one. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking of Lily's box of cards everyone returned unopened or never sent at all. In the morning, I found her digging through the closet. "What are you looking for, baby?" She held up an envelope with glitter edges. I found the one I made last year. I turned it over. It was sealed, stamped, addressed. My handwriting. Lily's drawing of a snowman peeking out the corner. But there was a red sticker over the address. Refused return to sender. Lily asked, "What does that mean?" I looked at her then, down at the envelope. "It means," I said carefully, "that sometimes people decide they don't want to get mail." She blinked at me, then nodded. That was it. But she didn't put the card back. She slid it into her backpack. The call came on December 21st around 7:30 in the evening. I had just put Lily to bed. She'd fallen asleep humming a Christmas tune, arms wrapped around a stuffed deer she named Olive. The apartment was quiet save for the dryer tumbling in the back. I almost didn't answer when I saw the caller ID. Evelyn Dalton. I froze. I hadn't seen her name on my screen in years. It looked out of place, like it belonged to someone else's life. I picked up. "Hi, Marie." Her voice was calm, flat, like she was calling to confirm a dental appointment. I managed a hello. "I was just going through some old things," she said. "Found some of Lily's drawings." I waited. "She's 6 now, right?" "7 in March," I said. She hummed. "Does she still like drawing?" "She does." A long pause. "Then, that's good. Art is a creative outlet." I almost laughed. It was the kind of thing she used to say when we were kids, just vague enough to sound supportive without touching anything real. But still, she called. After all this time. And she said Lily's name. That was something. She asked what Lily liked. I told her Fox's stickers, glitter pens, baking. Anything with orange frosting. Evelyn listened. Didn't interrupt. Then she said, "Maybe I'll put something together. A little package. I probably have time." And just like that, my chest tightened in a way I hadn't let it in years. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, replaying the words. Maybe I'll put something together. I let myself believe it. Not entirely, but just enough to tell Lily when she woke up the next morning that Grandma had called. Really, she asked, eyes wide. She asked about you. She remembered your drawings. Lily beamed. "Do you think she'll send something?" Maybe, I said. Maybe this year will be different. December 24th. The mail came early. Nothing. December 25th. The porch stayed empty. The inbox, too. Claire posted another photo of the kids in matching flannel holding mugs of cocoa in their boxes. Maddie's had a snow globe. Josh's had a mini football signed by someone I didn't recognize. Ava had a cookbook and measuring spoons. Lily said nothing. Just kept playing with Olive, pulling out scraps of tissue paper from our homemade box, fluffing them up like new. That night, I tucked her in and kissed her forehead. "Still no box," she whispered. "No." A pause. Did she change her mind? I looked at her. 7 years old, already knowing more about emotional withdrawal than she should. "No, sweetheart," I said. "Some people don't change, and that's not your fault." The next day, I walked to the post office with a small box wrapped in plain brown paper. Inside a snowman ornament Lily made out of clay, one of her drawings of a fox in a Santa hat, and a photo of her holding the cookie tin from Claire, smiling but not quite. I stood at the counter with the label in my hand. Then I folded it in half and dropped it in the trash. I walked out without sending anything. It was a Thursday in January when Aunt Ruth died. She wasn't technically my aunt, just my mother's cousin, but she was the only adult who ever asked if I was okay without making it sound like an obligation. She once told me I had the kind of eyes that don't lie. I think that's why Evelyn kept her at arm's length. The funeral was small, the kind where no one speaks unless spoken to. Cold wind, gray sky, folding chairs on wet grass. I saw Evelyn near the casket after the service, wrapped tight in her coat like she didn't trust the world to keep her warm. Claire stood beside her posture-perfect eyes, blank. No one looked at me. No one asked about Lily. After the burial, Claire invited me to her place for coffee, said Evelyn was too drained to host. There were things to sort Ruth's old teacups, embroidered napkins, photos. I followed her and not expecting anything, just going through the motions. While Claire repacked leftovers in the kitchen, I wandered through the house past the hallway table and into the dining room. Evelyn's laptop was open on the table screen, still bright. I didn't plan to read anything, but the email was already up. My name was in the subject line. It was from Evelyn, sent to Claire, 2 days before Christmas. "Thanks for handling the gifts again." The boxes looked perfect. "I only have 3 grandchildren, and I appreciate you helping me make that clear. Marie made her choice. I made mine. I won't reward shame with tradition. That child is not family. I won't be guilted into pretending." I didn't move. My hands stayed at my sides, but something inside me curled away. It wasn't about memory. It wasn't about forgetting an address or losing a list. It was policy. She had written us out, not by accident, not from distance, but with intention. I stared at the words until they no longer looked like language, until they just became shapes made by someone I used to call Mother. Then I stepped back quietly. Claire was still talking in the kitchen, laughing lightly with someone on the phone. I didn't tell her what I saw. I didn't mention it on the drive home. There was no point. Some truths come fully formed. They don't need unpacking. They don't need forgiveness. They just need to be left exactly where they're found. I didn't sleep much after the funeral. It wasn't the cold or the silence. It was the email, how easy it looked on the screen, how clean. As if what Evelyn said wasn't cruel, just efficient, like removing a name from a list. By morning, I stopped asking myself why. I found a box in Lily's closet, sturdy, unused, the kind Evelyn always liked. Clean corners, no markings. I lined it with soft tissue pulled from the drawer we kept under the sink. Not the festive kind, just plain white. Then I started filling it. First, Lily's birthday card, the one with the fox sticker and uneven handwriting. It still said, "I love you" in shaky marker. Then the Christmas drawings she'd made over the years. Most of them I'd quietly tucked away, snowmen, stars, one lopsided tree with her name across the bottom in glitter glue. A clay ornament shaped like a snowflake. Slightly cracked, still precious. A photo of Lily baking cookies, her face streaked with flour and pride. She was wearing an apron I'd sewn from old pillowcases. Evelyn had never seen it. She never asked. I placed the drawings on top, smoothed the edges, then sealed the box shut. I printed a label, not with postage, just names, and an address that had never changed. And in the return section, I wrote, "Return to sender." I drove to Evelyn's house the next morning, parked half a block away, walked up the sidewalk slowly carrying the box in both hands like it weighed more than it did. The porch looked exactly as I remembered, weather-stained boards, a faded wreath, the same mat from 15 Christmases ago that still said, "Welcome." I didn't knock. I didn't wait. I just placed the box by the door under the window where she used to call Claire in from the yard. I stepped back, looked at it once, then I turned around and walked away. Not angry, not broken, just finished. Spring came late that year. Even in April, patches of snow clung to the ground like someone forgot to tell them winter was over. I started opening the windows during the day, just a little enough to let in air that didn't feel like memory. Lily didn't ask about the box, not on Easter, not on my birthday, not when she helped me put away the last of the holiday cards we never sent. One Sunday, I found her in the corner of her room with an empty shoebox in her lap. She was covering it in stickers, foxes, cupcake stars. I sat down beside her. "What's that?" I asked. She shrugged. "It's for later." "For what?" "For when I have kids," she said. "So I don't forget." Inside the box were blank note cards, some old ribbon, a few of the unused tags from our drawer. One of them still had our names written in my handwriting, Marie and Lily. I didn't say anything, just reached out and helped her smooth down the last sticker. She looked at me and smiled, not wide, not showy. Just enough. That night, as I folded laundry and listened to the wind shift outside, I realized something. There are boxes we wait for and ones we send. There are boxes that never arrive. And then there are the ones we keep. Lily's box didn't need a label. It didn't need a destination. It just needed to exist. And in that quiet, quiet way, children sometimes understand more than they should, she had made sure we wouldn't forget ourselves. She kept the box. Not to send, not to prove anything. Just so no one would forget again. I don't know what your box looks like. Maybe it's in a drawer. Maybe it's just a name you don't say out loud anymore. But if you've ever stood in the hallway wondering why they remembered everyone but you, if you've ever opened your hands and found them empty on Christmas morning when everyone else had something with a tag on it, you already know this story. We don't need to trade details. You don't have to tell me what they called you. Or how long you waited for the knock that never came. I've been there. And if you've kept your silence all these years, if you've held your own name like it wasn't worth the wrapping, just leave a dot, or one word they never said to you. I'll read it. We all will. If I could speak to the girl I was at 9, I wouldn't try to comfort her. I'd just tell her what no one else ever did. You weren't greedy, Rachel. You were just hungry. And not just for food. It was the kind of dinner that from across the room might have looked normal. A quiet Tuesday, meatloaf on a cracked ceramic platter, canned peas glistening from too much butter, mashed potatoes with the top raked like garden lines. My dad Gerald folded his napkin 3 times before placing it on his lap. My mom Susan poured iced tea and added lemon only to my brother's glass. Noah was 11, 2 years older than me, and treated like he'd invented the alphabet. When I sat down, I noticed my setting was different. Noah had a full-set polished fork butter knife cloth napkin folded into a triangle. Mine was a white plastic spoon slightly warped from a dishwasher it was never meant to go through. At first I thought it was a mistake. I reached toward the shared butter knife between us. Mom's hand snapped out like a mousetrap. She didn't shout, just pulled the knife away and set it beside Noah's plate. "You don't get the good forks," she said. "You eat like a dog." Noah smirked and took a bite of meatloaf like it was a victory. Dad didn't look up. My peas rolled off the spoon. The potatoes stuck to the plastic. I gave up and used my fingers. No one said a word. That night, I went to bed full of nothing. I closed my eyes and pictured a real plate, real silverware, something heavy warm, something meant for me. But even then, I knew better than to ask for it out loud. By the time I turned 10, I had stopped expecting fairness. I didn't cry when Noah got a full birthday party at the bowling alley and I got a cupcake with a candle that wouldn't stay lit. I didn't ask why my bath towel was always damp, already used, already cold. I just learned to dry myself faster. Noah had shelves of sneakers, bright white, barely worn. I had hand-me-down sandals that pinched and cracked. "You'll grow into them," Mom said. "Be grateful." That phrase was repeated so often it became like static in the walls. At 11, I placed second in the county spelling bee. The trophy was plastic, but I carried it home with both hands like it might melt. When I walked through the door, the house was dark. No one had come. Mom was watching TV folding towels. Dad was asleep. Noah didn't look up from his game. I stood there for a minute longer than I should have, just long enough to feel the sting settle into my chest. Then I went to my room and placed the trophy on a shelf that no one ever looked at. A few weeks later, I found an old family photo album on the bottom bookshelf. The first few pages were filled with birthdays, backyard cookouts, matching sweaters at Christmas. But I wasn't in any of them. Page after page, all Noah. There was one picture of a beach trip, and I saw myself finally standing to the side, holding a red bucket. But my face had been cut out, the jagged edge still visible. When I asked Mom, she didn't even turn her head. "You were there." Don't be dramatic. I stopped asking after that. I started observing instead. Like when Noah broke a neighbor's window with a baseball and Dad told the man I did it. "She needs to learn about consequences," he said. The man looked confused but nodded. I swept up the glass while Noah got a popsicle. I started to understand that I wasn't invisible. I was being edited out. I was 13 when I stopped asking permission to eat. That afternoon, I stayed late at school for tutoring. By the time I walked home, my stomach was twisting. The porch light was off, but the kitchen window glowed yellow. I smelled baked chicken cornbread and something sweet, maybe candied yams. The kind of meal I hadn't tasted in months. Inside the house was quiet. Plates sat stacked on the counter, still warm. I didn't think. I just moved. I found a small plate and served myself one drumstick, a spoonful of peas, a triangle of cornbread. I sat at the end of the table, not my usual spot, but farther from the hallway closer to the window. I picked up the fork metal, not plastic, and took a single bite of chicken. The door creaked. I froze. Mom stepped into the room. She looked at the plate, then at me. She didn't raise her voice, didn't ask questions. She walked across the floor in soft, deliberate steps, reached down, took my plate in both hands, and dropped everything into the trash. I didn't move. "You eat before your brother," she said, not even looking at me. "Dogs wait." Then, almost as an afterthought, she added, "You're not family." The fork hit the trash last. I heard the dull clink. A minute later, Noah walked in. Mom smiled like nothing had happened. She served him the same meal, chicken peas cornbread, on a real plate with a cloth napkin folded on the side. He never asked what I'd been eating. or why I was no longer at the table. I didn't cry that night. I stared at the ceiling for hours, watching shadows crawl like insects across the plaster. Then I sat up, pulled out the spiral notebook from my backpack, and wrote one sentence on the first page. They only feed you when you stay small. I didn't know what it meant yet, but it felt true. I didn't leave after the plate. I didn't even stop helping with dishes. But something inside me shifted. I started living with the volume turned down, quieter, sharper, watching instead of asking, not because I was afraid, but because I'd finally learned the rules. Silence was the only language they didn't try to rewrite. At 14, I joined a free community cooking program hosted at the library. It was mostly older women and 2 teenage boys who just wanted to skip detention. I kept to myself. I didn't tell them my favorite thing to make. I didn't tell them I barely ate. That's where I met Gloria Mason. 63, retired chef hair in a silver twist held with a pencil. She ran the kitchen like a drill sergeant but never raised her voice. If you burned the onions, she made you start over. If you plated poorly, she made you serve it to yourself and eat every bite. One afternoon, I sliced my thumb open trying to debone a chicken. It wasn't deep, but I froze. Blood ran down my wrist. I waited for someone to yell. Gloria didn't. She wrapped my hand in a towel, handed me a cold soda, and said, "Sit." She didn't ask what happened. Not to my hand, not to the scar on my knuckle, not to the way I flinched when she moved too fast. 2 weeks later after class, she handed me a binder. "You don't have to open it now," she said. "But when you do, read the yellow tab first." Inside was a printout of emancipation guidelines, shelter information, names and numbers I didn't recognize. At the back, folded like a recipe card, was a sticky note with 5 words. "You deserve more than scraps." I didn't cry. I thought I might. But the tears stayed somewhere behind my ribs, quiet and thick. I nodded, folded the binder, and slipped it into my backpack. At home that night, no one asked where I'd been. Mom handed me a paper plate with boiled pasta and a spoon. I ate it in the laundry room. In the dark, I took out the binder again. I didn't read it. Just touched the sticky note. Just let the words sit there. I wasn't ready yet, but I was beginning to plan. By 15, my silence had a rhythm. I'd wake early, leave the house before anyone noticed, and return when the lights were already on. I told Mom I was volunteering for extra credit. She didn't ask where. As long as I didn't eat before Noah, I could come and go. I spent weekends at the community center helping Gloria prep for youth cooking nights. I diced, cleaned, kept my head down. Then I'd walk 3 blocks to the school library where the AV tech let me sit in on his podcast editing sessions. "You've got good ears," he said once. "You listen with your face." I didn't tell him that listening had been the only way to survive at home. I learned about sound, faders, hiss, background noise, how to scrub a voice until it sounded like it was floating in your head, how silence had weight if you left it in the right places. I also learned patterns. Dad Gerald left the house every Sunday at 6:45 p.m., said it was for church board meetings, but the church wasn't open that late. I followed once from a block behind. He met 2 men in boots and flannel behind the auto yard on Bell Street. I saw envelopes. I saw him laugh. I didn't care what he was doing. I cared that he lied so smoothly. Mom Susan kept PTA envelopes in a blue folder labeled Field Trip Funds. Sometimes I saw her take out 20s and slip them into her purse. Once she dropped a receipt, a pedicure, and a slice of lemon pie. Noah the Golden Child filmed TikToks about family dinner values while drinking vodka through a Slurpee straw. His girlfriend told him not to post one video because it made him look too fake. He posted it anyway. None of this surprised me. But I started keeping notes, not online paper only. I wrote each entry like a recipe. Mom skimming ingredients. 3. PTA events. 1 lemon pie, $60 missing. Dad board meetings, method lies flannel 1 envelope per Sunday. Noah spoiled, garnish fake smile, blue Slurpee brand deals pending. I recorded what I could. The old recorder from the AV room fit inside my hoodie. I tested it at home, caught Mom talking about using leftover bake sale cash for groceries again, and Dad yelling about someone at work who peed himself when he raised his voice. I didn't listen for fun. I listened for survival. That spring, I volunteered at a soup kitchen. Gloria got me the shift. I didn't say much, just cleaned trays, restocked bread. But I started to see the difference between hunger and cruelty. Hunger passes. Cruelty lingers, feeds itself sharpens around quiet girls who don't ask for seconds. At home, the meals stayed the same. Noah got steak. I got pasta. Sometimes crackers. Once just ketchup on a paper napkin. I didn't react. I said thank you. Then I wrote it down. Every Sunday after the fake board meeting, I'd sit in my closet and transfer the audio files to a flash drive. I labeled them by tone. Not content. Tone. Flat, cold, casual, mocking, triumphant threat. They were ingredients. I didn't know what the final dish would be yet, but I was learning how to prepare it. Graduation came and went. Noah walked across the stage in a tailored suit holding a scholarship he barely earned. Mom cried. Dad shook hands with the principal like he built the school himself. I sat 5 rows back uninvited. When the ceremony ended, I left before they could pretend to notice me. That night, Noah got a car, a shiny used sedan with a bow on the hood. I got a text from Mom. Don't be late for dishes. I wasn't angry. I was done. I packed my things after midnight, not much one duffel the binder. Gloria gave me a small wooden box with my notebooks and a thumb drive. I left a note on the fridge. You threw away my plate. I set my own table. R. Then I walked out without making a sound. Gloria met me 2 blocks away, engine running, passenger door already open. She didn't ask questions. I didn't offer answers. We drove to the shelter's side house where a small cot and a clean towel were waiting. That night I slept without flinching, but I wasn't finished. The next morning I opened my laptop and uploaded the first and only episode of a podcast I'd been building for 6 months. It was called Leftover Daughter. No names, no locations, just my voice. Steady, low, patient. I told the story of a girl who grew up eating scraps while her brother dined like a king. A girl who learned to listen when speaking made her unsafe. A girl who learned how silence could record everything. The episode was 22 minutes, scored lightly with piano, edited down to nothing but clean sound and heavy truth. Then I mailed 3 envelopes. The first went to the school board inside audio of Mom joking about using field trip money to buy herself lunch. She laughed about it, laughed about poor kids with lunch debt. The second went to the church board, a clipped recording of Dad slurring over dinner. Rachel. She's nothing, barely human. I should have broken her jaw back then, teach her real quiet. The third went to Noah's brand partner, a flash drive with videos of underage drinking fake charity shoots, and a text thread where he laughed about bullying a classmate until she switched schools. I didn't expect fireworks. I expected silence. But the podcast started moving. 200 downloads, then 500, then 10,000. Then someone clipped one line and shared it to TikTok. When you feed a child scraps, she'll season her silence. It caught fire. People didn't know it was me. I never used my full name, never showed my face. But the story rang true for more people than I ever expected. Within a week, Noah's sponsors dropped him. Mom was quietly asked to step down from PTA. Dad, well, the church board called an emergency vote. He didn't even finish the meeting. They blamed online trolls, strangers, haters. They never looked my way. They didn't have to. The truth had its own voice, and it was louder than any of theirs ever was. It was a Tuesday when I saw the listing. 3-bedroom, 2-bath, fixer-upper, priced to move. No photos of the inside, but I didn't need them. I recognized the porch, the cracked railing, the sun-bleached number nailed above the door. It was my childhood home. I didn't celebrate. I didn't hesitate. I called Gloria. Her cousin worked at a nonprofit that helped youth aging out of unstable homes transition into first-time ownership. They had grant options, matching programs, and a short list of requirements. Steady work, purpose, proof that you knew what a house was and what it cost to keep one. I sent them the podcast. 48 hours later, the answer came back. Approved. By the time I signed the papers, foreclosure notices had already gone out. Turns out, when the PTA checks stopped coming, when Noah's brand deals dried up and Dad's church duties were revoked, money ran tight. Too tight to keep the mortgage afloat. The house slipped through their fingers and landed in mine. Closing day came quiet. A beige afternoon. The lawn hadn't been mowed in weeks. Boxes sat near the curb, soggy from last night's rain. Mom stood by the mailbox on her phone. Noah paced, shouting at someone. Dad wasn't in sight. I stepped out of Gloria's car with the key in one hand and a clipboard in the other, wore a gray hoodie, kept my hair tied back. No makeup, no announcement. When they looked up, I saw it confusion first, then panic. "What are you doing here?" Mom asked, still gripping her phone. Noah stared, jaw slack. I didn't answer them. I walked past the porch steps I used to scrub with a toothbrush, past the window where my reflection never looked like it belonged, up to the door. I unlocked it. The key turned clean. Then I turned back and said calm and steady I set the table this time. The door closed behind me. The silence was thick. I didn't peek through the blinds. I didn't listen to whether they stayed or left. I didn't care. Inside the walls looked smaller. The floors creaked the same. The smell bleach and old onions was still there. But it wasn't theirs anymore. That evening I didn't unpack much. Just one thing. A dining table. Heavy wood. Real grain. Paid with my own money. I placed 3 things on top. A copy of my broken hand's x-ray. A recorder still functional. And a nameplate that read, Rachel Carter Survivor, Not Guest. I didn't post photos, didn't tag anyone. The only audience that mattered was the air inside that house and the memory of the girl who once whispered to herself just to feel heard. I didn't need them to see me win. I just needed them to see me own the place they tried to erase me from. 3 days after I moved in, I hosted my first dinner. No announcements, no posts, no family. Just 6 chairs. 1 for me. The rest for people who knew my name without having to be reminded. Gloria came early, arms full of groceries. "I brought real butter," she said, "the kind that leaves a mark." We cooked in silence, the good kind, sizzling pans, low music, windows open. The house didn't echo anymore. The guests arrived quietly. A girl from the shelter who once gave me half her sandwich without asking why I hadn't eaten. A teacher who let me nap in the back row during midterms instead of marking me late. The AV tech from school. A neighbor who once returned my notebook with a note, "You write like you're remembering something no one else lived." We set the table together. No plastic. No paper napkins. Just plates full warm even. No one waited. No one asked who deserved what. Every plate held the same thing, a seared steak, mashed potatoes, peach slices, and chilled glass bowls. I didn't make a speech. I just watched them eat, watched the way no one looked over their shoulder. No one flinched when reaching for salt. When I passed the last plate to Gloria, she looked at me and asked, "Why come back here, Rachel?" I smiled. "This place used to be a prison," I said, but I turned the locks around. Later that night, after everyone left, I walked the hallway in socks. The same floor that once creaked under fear now felt steady. The mirror by the entry still had a crack in the corner. I stood in front of it, touched the scar on my hand, watched how my fingers moved, bent slightly wrong but steady. They worked. They typed the truth. They set the table. And when I looked at my reflection, just me, no shadow behind, I didn't feel small. I felt full. If you were ever told to wait your turn and it never came, just leave a single dot.